When you think about some of the inference in particular that they're starting to penetrate with Nvidia, some of the applications, you heard Jensen Huang just being so optimistic there about the agentic AI adoption skyrocketing. Is that what you're seeing? Is that the advice you're giving to your parent companies that you're going to at the moment?
Well, you asked a good question a second ago, which is at what point are we so bullish we're bearish? And I think that the market certainly is excited and continues to be excited about what Jensen is saying and what Nvidia is doing for good reason, which is that AI is, we're still in the beginning of realizing how much value we could create with unmetered intelligence. And then the consequence of that is the rest of the market has to figure out what happens if intelligence is a resource. What happens if intelligence is in fact like water or electricity or the internet, and it tracks towards being unmetered. And that's something that macroeconomists and you are going to have a pretty amazing time over the next 10, 20 years trying to figure out.
Citrini Research is trying to figure it out right now for 2 years' time. And it's interesting that as we see Nvidia rally after its numbers, we're seeing plumbing new depths for CRM. For Salesforce, we're now off by 4.5%, let's call it. We saw that Snowflake did turn lower. So again, this anxiety around the software space being beaten up by agentic AI. How are you seeing, considering the book that you've just written, are you of this dystopian mindset that in 2028 we'll have extraordinary amounts of unemployment and maybe you and I will be having more time to write poetry?
Well, one of those things is dystopian, the other is not, and so I don't want to flirt too much with a future where we don't work, because I actually do think humans will figure out how to toil. But I do beg the question in the book: why must we work to be happy? And is there something else? If we can figure out how to feed, clothe, and house everyone, can we not actually find more time to recreate with friends and families? Places of worship, outside dining room tables. Is that not maybe why we're here? But we'll come to that later, because the viewers want to ask or want to know the answer to the question, what's going on in software? And I think there's a reminder to everyone that the Citrini Research report is as good at being mimetic as it is at sort of providing any real evidence. There are all sorts of flaws with the paper itself, but I think what's important is that we are all trying to figure out what's coming. Derek Thompson wrote something really smart this morning. He said no one has any idea what's happening, and that's half the problem. These responses are these capitulations are so dramatic. But I will propose this, which is we kept asking if AI was a bubble. And maybe we were asking the wrong question. Maybe software was the bubble all along. And I remind all of us that 10 years ago, everyone said these software prices are way too inflated. How could these companies possibly trade at 30x multiple? Well, maybe finally it's correcting. Maybe the value of software is sort of being found out, especially the monolithic pieces of software.
This gets to the idea, though, too. I mean, some of the pushback that we saw coming out of that report, I mean, there were kind of counter reports to this idea. And some of this, by Anthropic itself, when it had that web stream, and I don't know if they were just playing lip service to it, but the idea that a lot of these tools that they've been rolling out, at least in their view, can be complementary rather than just kind of the destructive force that the market seems to think that they might be.
Well, again, destructive we should define destructive, because destructive in this case is destructive to market cap of a certain segment of companies, but actually quite creative to or additive to an entire other market segment. I mean, I think the question is, if AI creates a bunch of value, does it have to borrow some of that value from other segments? Probably. But can it also distribute that value to a bunch of other markets? Definitely. And I think the reminder I have is if value comes out of S&P, it's going to go, or software in particular, it's going to go somewhere else. And then you have to start asking, where does it go? And my bet for the last 4 years has been bio and life sciences, all novel sciences for that matter, molecular particle material, construction, and anything building in the real world, hospitality, entertainment. Like, there's a bunch of knock-on positive consequences if we actually reduce the cost of creating software. And I do think it's important that Anthropic tell people that they are a partner in this game. Yeah. But the reality is they may not be. I mean, they may just be taking value straight out of another company's market cap.
Yeah, and they might be. And look, there's a lot of issues in terms of how much we trust what they say. But to your point, though, too, I mean, I know we always focus on the downside of AI, the gloom and doom, that it'll all sort of take all our jobs away. But you mentioned a few of the industries. And just last week, we did a whole big special on a lot of these trucking companies and logistic companies that have really benefited from AI and machine learning. And those companies will tell you they've been actually using that type of machine learning now for, long before ChatGPT sort of came into the public consciousness here. So when we talk about that upside benefit, why don't you think we're hearing, I guess, a little bit more of a narrative around that, or at least a narrative that is cutting through the noise?
Well, when I started writing the book, I basically decided I was going to tell a story about technology on behalf of an industry that can often struggle to tell its own story. And I think so much of big tech has lost consumer trust. Some of this is social media. Some of this is addiction to the screen. Some of this is just a waning trust in institutions right now globally. But there's a bigger issue, which is I do think that there's a lack of narrative around all that can be created if you unmeter intelligence, if you create a world where brilliance is as simple as turning on a light switch. And of course, I'm not proposing that everyone is smart. The internet doesn't mean we do research. Literacy doesn't mean that everyone reads. It simply means that we are now exploring a world where agency gives you the opportunity to unlock a bunch of new things. My expectation is we're gonna see a bunch of really incredible things created, in particular around novel sciences. Our ability to know much more about the known universe is coming, but people have to see that in order to get there, and we're still there's this space in between where what they're watching is software get crushed, and we don't yet have cars full of autonomous vehicles, and we don't yet have a cure for cancer, and people are like, okay, well, what's the value to me then?